Standing outside right now of my restaurant that I ran for 42 years. It's still the original building that my grandmother built around 1925, 26. Her and her husband bought a farm here in 1924 that stretched from here all the way to the back to the bayfront water. So at that time, this road we're standing on was the original Highway 2 that ran from Toronto to Hamilton. It was the main highway connecting those two cities, so it'd be roughly equivalent to today's QEW. This was very heavily traveled, and that's why she decided to start a business here. About 10 years before I was born, they moved the highway, or moved this road over to the other side of the road on the other side of the RBG. So we went from being the QEW to being nothing really, very little traffic. Before that happened, this is a busy, really busy corner. 3 doors down was a restaurant named Barb and Ed's. On the other corner was a gas station. Beside that was a variety store. On this side was another gas station and a small restaurant named Jesse's. And on the other corner was a motel. So you can see it was very busy, busy little corner. When they moved, after they moved the road, one by one, all these businesses failed because there was just no traffic anymore. My grandmother thought that she would go out of business too, but she hung in there, refused to give up, and she kept it going as everybody else failed, but she hung around here, and eventually the business came back and it flourished all over again. The road out front was Highway 2, which would be like the QEW today. And she thought to herself, "Gee, I bet you these people want something to eat when they're driving by." So she started selling tea and sandwiches and, just snacks and whatnot. And then she thought, well, they probably need somewhere to sleep at night maybe. So the odd time, if somebody needed somewhere to sleep, she would rent out a bedroom in her house to a traveler and kick my dad out. He'd have to go sleep in the barn or something, so she could get a couple of bucks for somebody sleeping in the house. And then as time went by, she became the postmistress. But this was originally at one time a post office, and everybody in Aldershot from roughly King Road, probably even further down, to King Road roughly, would have to come here and get their mail. So she was very proud of that she was the postmistress. And the funny story was when they had to be sworn in at those days, and when they came to swear her in, she was out working in the farm, so they had to find her out in the middle of the farm and swear her in as a postmistress. I grew up in the house next door. My dad built the house next door by himself just before I was born, and actually he built the basement part first and put a floor on the basement, and then my brother and sister and my mom and dad had to live in the back here for about a year or two until my dad got enough money to finish the main floor of the house, and then they all moved in there when about 3 or 4 years before I was born. Obviously I worked here a lot, so it wasn't, I never got paid. If I ever asked my dad to pay me, he'd say, "How do you like the shirt on your back?" And that was pretty much his answer if I asked to get paid. But it was a nice childhood. Everybody liked me because they wanted to get a free hot dog, but it was interesting growing up here, yeah. In the beginning, the restaurant was, when my grandmother built it was a fruit stand. You can see when you look around the different beams coming across as they added on. So that, as I say, it started as a fruit stand, then she started selling food, and then the post office was added. And at that time we had outhouses out the back, so just before I was born they added actual washrooms out the back. But the interior is still exactly, this counter and these booths were all original from around 1929, 28, something like that. The street names in Aldershot, Danforth, Boothman, and Easterbrook, were all family names. Easterbrook obviously after us, but at that time, back then, there's 3 Easterbrook brothers that owned farms all along Plains Road. Two of them own farms where Easterbrook Avenue and Boothman Avenue are. John Boothman is actually my great-great-grandfather, and his daughter married my other great-great-grandfather's son. So that's how Boothman became part of the family name. And Danforth, similarly, a woman named Danforth, our family had a daughter, and her name was actually Mary Danforth, married into our family, and she married in Easterbrook, so that's where the Danforth name comes from. Originally, Campbell's Corners, the official name in the old city maps then was Easterbrook's Corners, because another brother owned a farm right there called the Inverness. It was in behind where, roughly where the McDonald's is now at the corner of King and Plains Road. But back then, there was a big sign there saying Campbellville Inn with an arrow pointing up King Road, and that was the way to get to that hotel. So as time went on, the bus driver, or whoever, probably not bus drivers, but eventually people just started calling it Campbell's Corners because of the big sign that said Campbellville Inn, but its official name was Easterbrook's Corners. At one time, because 3 or 4 of my ancestors owned farms on Plains Road, they put up a toll booth to maintain Plains Road. So if people had to bring cattle into the slaughterhouses in Hamilton, they would have to pay a toll. And I remember finding a bill of lading or an advertisement at one time, and it was like cows and pigs were a penny or 2 pennies to go across, but if you're a rider on horseback going to church, you could travel for free. I actually have a picture of that somewhere as well. I think in my life, the main character that I've heard about and learned about was my grandmother. As I say, she was the driving force to do everything. She and her husband, well, mostly her, because her husband was ill, as I said, but she was set and determined that she wasn't going to lose this farm. She did everything she could to keep it all the way through the Depression, through the World War II, all the hard times. She sold bits and pieces of the farm off to pay taxes or whatnot and to pay the mortgage. But she was set and determined that she was going to keep that farm and give it to her family one day, and she did. And like I say, she would do anything to make a nickel. I remember one story where she used to have, it was illegal, of course, but she had a slot machine in the counter of the restaurant. And she saw a policeman coming in one day, and she knew she could probably get in trouble, so she picked it up and carried it out the back. And later, it took my dad and his 2 brothers both to be able to lift it, to bring it back. It was so heavy, but she carted it out there by herself, you know. And then, she was something else. I remember too, when I mentioned she had a broken hip and was out there hoeing, she befriended a crow. And I don't know if she fixed its wing or what, but for about 2 years, this crow would hop along and follow her all over the place. And when she'd go into the house, the crow would hop up on the eaves trough and sit there and wait for her. And then when she came back out, the crow would hop along and find her. So eventually what they did was they took the crow up to my uncle's farm in Campbellville and let him loose and figured he wouldn't find his way back, and he never came back. But his name was Sam, by the way. Sam the Crow. After 42 years, and sold it to my son, and he's doing a fantastic job now. I couldn't believe anybody would want it, but he did, and so I sold it to him, and just loves it, he seems like, and he's doing a great job. I couldn't be prouder. The future of the restaurant here, I think, is in good hands because my son Blake just loves it, and he's so proud of the history of it and everything. He has absolutely no intentions of selling it. Hopefully he has children someday that he can pass it on to. As of now, he doesn't, but I'm sure as long as he's alive, it'll be here and thriving. And I always told him, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So he has no plans on any fancy renovations or anything. You know, he's just going to keep it the way it is and do the best he can and keep her going.